Hello and welcome to the Monitor Brief. It's May 13th. I'm Kristen Tallman. Today's main segment is a conversation with All Monitor's President Andrew Parasility on the view from the Biden White House as he looks to a ceasefire deal for his election 2024 saving grace. But first, let's get you caught up on the headlines. The Biden administration does not believe Israel is likely to achieve total victory in its war against Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip, a senior state official said Monday. A group of Israeli settlers attacked a large Jordanian aid convoy in the West Bank while it was en route to the Gaza Strip on Monday, in the third such incident this month. Monday's summit between Turkish president and Greek prime minister, heralded as a milestone in improving ties between the historically hostile nations, was marked instead by Erdogan's spirited defense of Hamas during a live press conference that followed their meeting in Ankara, and his disclosure that over 1,000 Hamas members were being treated in Turkey. A prominent Iranian filmmaker said on Monday that he had left the country in defiance of a legal case against him. An area of Jerusalem's National Military Cemetery where soldiers were killed in Gaza are buried was on Monday filled with mourners and emotion as Israel marked a painful Memorial Day. Tunisian lawyers protested and launched a nationwide strike on Monday after the arrest of a lawyer and political commentator in a weekend police raid. Israel battled Hamas in Gaza on Monday, including in far southern Rafah, despite U.S. warnings against a full-scale invasion of the crowded city and of the threat from post-war anarchy or insurgency. Thousands fled northern Gaza on Monday as renewed shelling pounded areas where Israel says Hamas militants have regrouped, despite having announced cleared them months ago. Now, on to the main segment. Hey, Andrew, welcome to the Monitor Brief.
Well, Kristen, good to be with you this morning.
So last week, the Biden administration, including Biden himself, made comments that seemed to show that there were tensions between Israel and its closest ally, the U.S., growing. Biden is facing significant pressure at home, including from much of his voting base in an election year that he can't quite afford to lose, pushback on many of the U.S.'s stance on Israel's war in Gaza. You wrote about this last week. Can you talk a little bit about if Biden is winning or losing the showdown with Netanyahu over Gaza?
Kristen, I think that Biden is overall losing the showdown with Netanyahu over Gaza. First, let's start in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu is not paying a price for his defiance of President Biden regarding the conduct of the war in Gaza. There is no constituency in Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. There is no constituency for holding off on an operation in Gaza, and there is no constituency for a Palestinian state. These are the three issues in which President Biden has had an issue with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu's political survival depends on appeasing his extreme right-wing flank. And as long as he stays the course in terms of his operation, even defies President Biden with regard to these requests on these issues, where not only public opinion in the United States increasingly, especially among Democrats, but also worldwide, has been critical of Israel. So number one, in Israel, Netanyahu's not paying the price. That's one reason he may be winning. Domestically, at home, what's happened is that the Palestinian issue has become a major cause for progressives. Biden depends on progressives for his base within the Democratic Party. It's not to say that the progressives are the majority base. It's not to say that within the Democratic Party, there's still not strong support for Israel, especially among establishment Democrats. But what's happened is that Democrats are now split on the issue of Israel and Palestine. And this has been very difficult for President Biden. He's in a tough, so far, 6 months out before the November presidential election, he's in a tough race, very tight, according to Real Clear Politics and other polls. President Trump is ahead in national polls and in closely contested battleground states. That could all change. Again, we're 6 months out. And while noting that Gaza, Palestine is not the predominant issue within the Democratic Party. It's a cause within the progressive flank on which Biden depends for a strong turnout in these close races. And one more point why I think why this issue has been so difficult for President Biden. There's also the Arab American and Muslim American constituency. So President Biden is also having an issue with Arab Americans. And this is especially keen in Michigan. Michigan has 15 electoral votes. So in a close race, Michigan could decide the presidency. Biden's losing Michigan as of now. And again, very, very close, a tightly contested race. But as of now, he's losing. Arab Americans are highly mobilized, and Biden has so far lost them. The only way Biden, I think, can turn this around, and I wrote this in the piece this week, is if he can move, or the parties move, and he can help the parties move toward a ceasefire. And then the conversation can change, and the conversation can then be about a Palestinian state as part of the post-war Gaza settlement. And this could put Biden on safer ground. The sooner that conversation happens, the better, because then as people move away from the war and think about the future, he's looking for an historic deal, which could include normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, that includes recognition of a Palestinian state, which Saudi Arabia said is conditional on normalizing ties with Israel after the war.
So in so many ways, Biden is really counting on a ceasefire to also then hold on to his political future domestically in the U.S.
I think it's going to be a key issue. Obviously, within the United States, the issues that most preoccupy voters include the border security and immigration, the economy, crime, healthcare, education. I mean, these are the big ticket items. But this issue matters to a significant part of the base. I'd also add that Republicans are making the most of this issue, including the domestic chaos, as they describe it, on college campuses with protesters being critical of the Biden administration policy towards Israel, calling for a ceasefire. And Republicans are saying that Biden is selling out Israel in its hour of need, when we should be backing them in this war against Hamas. And I also pointed out in the piece last week, as I pointed out in many pieces since the start of the war, this is an especially difficult issue for President Biden. I would say he is the most genuinely and emotionally committed president to in his support to Israel that we have ever had. He has seen the Israeli-Palestinian issue throughout his career through the lens of Israel, who he supports 100%. And therefore, as this issue is moved after October 7th, he went to Israel. He expressed his support. This was so appreciated and felt by Israelis after the terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7th, which killed 1,200, and it was appreciated. He is seen as a good friend of Israel within Israel and by the pro-Israel community here in the United States. And as I said, for President Biden, that's heartfelt. That's not just a political play for votes or to a certain constituency. He really believes in this friendship and commitment by the United States. So for him to have to get into a tit for tat with Prime Minister Netanyahu, with whom he's had a close, if at times fractious relationship over the years, definitely at its worst point now. It's certainly the die is cast in terms of their personal relationship, or at least so it seems. Biden doesn't want to hold back on support on conditioning weapon sales because he believes, like many in the administration and the United States believe, that Israel has every right to take out Hamas and its leadership. But the issue has become something domestically as well as internationally, which Biden has to factor in his calculations in how he deals with Israel.
Right. Yeah. And that's where the divide between Biden and college students and how they see this conflict and point of view could not be larger. Andrew, thank you so much for joining and catching us up to speed.
Great to be with you, Kristen. And just a reminder to our readers, all this and more is well covered every day here at O Monitor from the region, from Washington. And if you're not reading O Monitor, you're missing an awful lot about what's happening in the Middle East.
That's it for today, May 13th. You can read all these stories and more, as Andrew said, on allmonitor.com.